Welcome to Earth 2.0. I'm Anita Casalina. As we move forward to build a more just and compassionate post-pandemic world, we'll need to build awareness of the rights of all people, including those who don't identify with traditional binary gender roles. My guest, Eli Berry St. John, manages social media and awareness for the TGI Justice Project, protecting the lives and civil liberties of Black Americans who define themselves outside the conventional model. Hi, Eli. It's great to have you with us now.
Hey, how you doing?
Really good, really good. And I'd like this conversation between us to be very educational for the viewers because a lot of people don't understand this division of gender identification. So let's start with really basic. What does the TGI stand for, and can you identify for me what each one of those means? Because I want the audience to really get it. I think there's a lot of people out there who part of their problem is that they just don't know.
So TGIJP, right, is who I work for. I'm the communications director. TGI is transgender, gender variant, and intersex. A transgender person is a person that was brought into this world where there's a social construct of gender, that there are two, that there's a binary, meaning there's woman and man. Transgender is somebody who the gender that they may have been told they were is not the gender that they identify with, or they identify with no gender.
Okay, and then the second one that you mentioned is?
Gender variant, it's a larger term. We like to say sometimes like under umbrella terms. I'm somebody who I am transgender, and I also identify as gender variant, and I have been gender variant across the whole entire journey of my life. And to say that is, when I was navigating and the world was assuming I was a woman, I was more masculine. I wore clothing from the section that they say is for men. And that is what makes the gender variance. Your gender does not fall within the constructs of what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman. And you actually embrace and identify that way.
I see, okay. And there's one more too, which is the I, right?
So intersex are people who were brought into this world and their sex is not of the binary. And that's how I explain intersex. What that means is most of us believe there's female and male sex, and that's it. And that's just not true.
I think this is a really good basic start because I know a lot of people, if I tell them any of these terms, they get confused. And it makes me think that part of the bias and part of the struggle of people who don't fit into the binary model simply comes from people's ignorance. They don't know who these people are. They don't know how to relate to them. And then in your case, with what we're talking about today with Black Americans, you add another layer or more of the potential for abuse to take place. And so that's what I wanted to talk with you about now that you've given us this really nice, succinct way of identifying. Primarily, your work is with the criminal justice system. Is that correct? Because of the way that it abuses these people who are not fitting into these binary roles.
So, just to give your audience an idea, TGIJP is a group of transgender, gender variant, and intersex people inside and outside of prisons, jails, and detention centers, are creating a united family in the struggle for survival and freedom. Our executive director is Ms. Janetta Johnson, a Black trans woman formerly incarcerated. The communities that we serve have suffered a lot of harm from the criminal legal system, over policing, high rates of abuse by law enforcement and outside of law enforcement, arrest, prosecution, incarceration, and pretty much overall just the criminalization of gender.
Well, that's actually what I would like people to understand more of. What are the issues that transgender or any of these people you represent, what is it that they go through? Why do you feel that there's this over policing, and what kinds of things can you tell us about that? Because as we're looking at the overarching issues of police abuse, We need to really see, what about this specific group of people? Let's not let them slip through the cracks and only think of, a broader picture. Let's make sure we know about what these people go through as well.
There's a young woman by the name of Cece McDonald. And Cece is a survivor of violence in a racist, transphobic attack. Cece protected herself and the other person, it led to their demise. Cece was incarcerated and she's free now. Unfortunately, people had to fight for her to be free because she survived something, and got caught up in the system. Now, I bring that story up because at our teaching, we talked about what we need, right? When we want to talk about why Black trans people, right, are in the situation they are, and other people are impacted by the system of oppression that often harms mostly Black trans people. There's other people who get caught up in the loop. So what we need is public health diversions, restorative justice, decriminalization laws, community control of police. We need to rethink our traditional punitive approaches to reducing crime. Those immediate things provide us with a major increase in public safety. Reducing crime, cutting unnecessary spending for more police and more gendered prisons. We don't need, right? When you think about gender, right? And you say, oh, we have prisons, trans women are subjected to various amounts of violence in prison, right? So people would think, they go, oh, let's make a trans prison. No, we don't need any prisons.
We don't need any more prisons. That's not the
Right.
point, is it?
Exactly. So to implement the world without jails, it will require a comprehensive engagement to achieve change, including re-examining how we view punishment in the context of the carceral state and re-examining the ways in which we police one another over gender nonconformity. What that says is a step towards prison abolition is to abolish gender policing. Now, in a very basic way, what that means is, as a trans person, I've had these conversations with my grandmother, my mother, my father. I'm blessed to have support in my family, which majority of trans people don't have that. And when I asked them questions, I asked my dad, I said, Dad, who told you blue is for boys? And he had to think about it. And he can't tell me who told him.
All that socialization, everything you're talking about comes down to that deep, deep socialization where everything is organized in a specific way. And you talk about the policing, the over-policing of people who just don't, gender conformity is what you're calling it, that people who don't fit with gender conformity, they are sought out and abused just for being who they are.
Let's take a recent example. If y'all are not familiar with the name Iana Dior, then that name you should become familiar with. Iana Dior is a survivor of a trans misogynistic attack. Thankfully, she's here with us today. And we cannot say the same for Brayla Stone, who is the most recent young, 17 years young, Black trans woman, young woman, to be heinously murdered and her life just snatched away from her. Now, the reason I bring this up is we are right now in the midst of what we call uprisings. We are seeing things happen that they told us couldn't happen. We'll talk very basic. The bus should be free. Public transportation should be free, right? We saw them make it free during the pandemic.
Right. The pandemic opened our eyes to a lot of possibilities.
Right. I bring that up to say, during these uprisings, what we have not seen is a decrease on the amount of violence that Black trans women are facing. So while we're creating a world where we want to end carceral state violence, it also means we have to invest in ending the violence of gender policing.
I think I have a couple more questions about that, which is, number one, what is the way you're going about making this change? And number two, has anything started to show positive movement forward for you?
Well, as far as TGIJP goes, the way that we make this change is providing our members with the very basic necessities they need to win. If all of us were put in a position where we were given the tools to win, we would all be winning. Unfortunately, we all know if you're of a marginalized identity, whether it's a woman, you're trans, you're Black, disabled, whatever it may be, you are set up to lose. And by giving people the tools they need to win, the support they need, people need support. There's this false idea of independence on this land that we have, that you have to be so independent. And we need each other. No human has been able to be here without somebody. All of us were little babies that required somebody to take care of us. And we are still just big babies that need somebodies to take care of us.
So what kinds of tools are you talking about specifically?
So in TGIJP, the type of things that we have is we have reentry programs. And in those programs, it allows people a chance to come home out of prison and come home to housing, come home to job, come home to food. The same things you need so that you survive, they need. And how are we going to help people come out of a system that claims to be about rehabilitation? However, how long have prisons been around and we're not any more safe? We have a rapist that is in charge of this country. And we see that that person's not in jail. So what does that mean for the entire system?
Well, we know that along with all of the other, what you're referring to as the uprisings, I mean, I've been on this planet a long time, and I've waited a long time to see this much change as is going on right now. So right now I'm feeling hopeful about the overall picture, and that's why I wanted to include you, because I don't want to exclude anybody at this point as we build a post-pandemic world. If that's at all possible, we have to include everyone. And I'd like to check back with you, in a few months and see how things are going, because I want to see if you're able to ride this wave of the uprising, or if this is a door that's truly opening for all of you. Eli, we're so happy to have you with us today. You're wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Appreciate you enormously.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.